Today's Frugal Friday video is for a very simple, easy pattern. This can be found on the website So Can She. They have lots of free patterns, lots of free sewing projects on their website. If you see any on there that you would like me to sew up, please let me know. This pattern is only going to require 2 pieces. I chose to use a cotton canvas because I didn't really want to add any interfacing, and this saved me a little bit of time. This is going to be a card pouch, so it can be used for credit cards, driver's license, to give gift cards, but I even thought it would be something that could be cute for organization within a purse, maybe even for feminine products or coupons or receipts, anything you might have that you want to just keep a little organized and know where it is inside your purse. When you get this pattern, it comes with a template with 2 sizes, small and large. This is the large I'm sewing up now, but I also feel like you could print it at a larger percentage, maybe 120%, to have this a little bit bigger if you felt that would fit your needs better. Just note that if you print it bigger, your credit cards would not fit as snugly inside, so that would be something that you would want to take in consideration. If you wanted to add interfacing to these 2 pieces, or if yours was a cotton woven and not a cotton canvas, I would definitely suggest you add interfacing like an SF101. Royal Pixie Light is what I use in my sewing room, and I would make sure I keep it out of the seam allowances. When you see this area right here, this sharp corner, you definitely would not want a lot of bulk in there, so that would prevent it when you turn it out from having a really nice crease. So I definitely would want to keep the interfacing out of that area. Honestly, I would keep it out of all the seams, but specifically this one for sure. The only thing we're doing with this is we're taking these 2 pieces, we're placing them right sides together, matching everything up. We're going to sew all around, but we're going to leave an opening here at the bottom. So let's go ahead and start sewing with the seam allowance given the pattern. If you want, you can clip it. My materials kind of grabby on each other, so I'm not even going to worry about clipping it. I'm going to start a little towards one side, so I'll leave the opening in the middle, and I'm going to make for sure I backstitch when I start and stop. I give free sewing classes at my local library. The library was able to secure a grant so that they were able to get sewing machines to have for use in the library. With these classes, I'm not allowed to ask these students or require the students to bring in any of their own supplies. I have to provide them all. I get a small stipend for those supplies to cover the cost, but we all know how expensive sewing supplies are. So by getting to sew patterns like this, I'm able to save money on that class, so I don't have a big out-of-pocket expense. If you are someone who is a little bit skilled with sewing, you don't have to be perfect or anything like that, this would be a great thing for you to consider doing in your area. Reach out to your library and see if they have an option to apply for a grant to get those sewing machines to offer sewing classes there. Patterns like this are going to be a quick, simple way that you can help others find the love of sewing without it being very stressful. What I like to do is I like to let the students kind of vote on different projects that they would like to do. You can give them the website ahead of time so that they can go ahead and print out their own copy of the template if they wanted, so they can know. Some students like to bring their own materials, but most of them just let me cut out the materials before the class, and then I show up with everything cut, prepped, ready to go. If you don't feel comfortable starting out teaching classes at your local library, consider seeing if there's a friend or someone in your community that would like to learn to sew, and use this pattern as one that might help them get started in sewing. Patterns without hardware like this one and really simple steps give people the confidence to start sewing, but it doesn't cause you a lot of stress to have to teach all the steps. If you are just starting out sewing, you might want to draw on your seam allowance just so you know exactly where to pivot. Sometimes it can get a little confusing to know where you need to pivot just to keep that perfect seam allowance. When you come to the curve, I just constantly am shifting and adjusting. I lift up my foot every few stitches I take just so everything stays in line with that seam allowance. I don't need to leave a really big opening because this isn't going to be a pouch or a bag or anything that's going to be hard to turn. So I'll leave a small opening there at the bottom. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim up these extra threads here. I'm going to just cut a diagonal across this corner and this corner. Inside here though, I'm actually going to cut a slit just directly towards that other seam in the corner. So just a slit there. I'll take off a little bit of the extra bulk just so whenever I turn this, there's not a lot of extra bulk kind of hanging out there, and it just provides a little bit more space for the fabric to be able to be turned without looking too bulky in that area. As far as the rest of the seams, I'm not going to do much. I'm going to use my pinking shears, and I'll do this in the sewing class I'm giving on this just so the students can kind of understand that the pinking shears will help reduce some bulk and give them a little bit of a better corner. Is it necessary for you to use the pinking shears? No, it's not. But if you're teaching a class, it's just an opportunity to build that skill and to show others other ways you can reduce bulk whenever you have curves on a bag or a pouch. So the pinking shears, I'll just start here at the bottom on this curve and start slowly going around. You can see I'm not cutting too close to those seams. I'm staying pretty decently away, maybe cutting this seam allowance in half. I'm going to do the same thing here on this curve and again on the last curve. Now what you're going to do is you're just going to reach inside here, take the time to turn this out. Whenever I start turning a bag, I try to go to the farthest part away. It could be this curve at the top or even this one over here, but what I like to do is I like to start there by pushing my thumb in and slowly pushing it out, and that's how I get it started. I have a metal chopstick that I use to kind of smooth out these curves and corners on the inside, but you can use whatever you want. I've even used scissors that kind of have a blunt or rounded edge and been able to push it out with that. So whatever you have in the home works. You don't have to buy anything special. So you can see I'm taking the chopstick, putting it in there, and just pushing everything out. And then I will go around probably 2 or 3 times just to kind of smooth out all the corners, curves, creases, everything like that. I don't push so hard that I'm going to pop the stitches or cause any problems with that. Just running it along there and smoothing it. If you see any problems with your threads showing or not laying smoothly, that just means you didn't cut close enough to the stitches. You can go back in there if you want and do that. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just kind of manipulate it and fold it so that it doesn't look too bad, but that's just the reason why it's showing. You just didn't clip close enough, so you can always go back. It's kind of a risk. You don't want to get too close because you don't want to cut your stitches, but also you want it to lay nicely. You can see this puckering right here, that is the same thing, just didn't cut close. It looks as if I cut closer on this side than I did on this side. Let's just slip that back open and look and see if I can cut a little bit more. Definitely can. Whenever I push this back open, I can see I have plenty of room to go a little bit closer without risking those stitches at all. So I'll just kind of slowly get closer to that. When I push it back open, you can see that puckering is now gone. It leaves a lot smoother. After I turn this out, the bottom edges are automatically going where they need to. If they're not, just kind of pull everything, put your fingers in that opening and pull, and see if they'll go in the way you want them to go. The best step, the best practice at this point would be to take this over to the iron and iron it flat. Press it, make sure everything is laying really nicely the way you want. Make sure your corners are out, your curves are smooth, all that. I get lazy lots of times, as I think we all do, and we just kind of skip the step of ironing. If you think back to your earlier days of sewing, you probably always ironed everything just to make sure you got the best finish. Definitely with students, if you're teaching this, it's always good to explain to them the benefits of ironing and pressing those seams flat. So now I'm just rolling my seams. I'm adding a few clips just to help me so that when I top stitch all around this, I have a decent finish on this pouch. Your bottom area will be the area you'll need to work on the most with rolling. You can see those seams are just kind of pulling in there. If they're pulling too much, you can even get a stick pin to use it to pull it out, or you can put your hand or finger, the chopstick, whatever you have back inside to roll those seams a little bit better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just start sewing. If you want, you can go ahead and sew where the opening is and go ahead and get that closed first so that you know that's taken care of. So whenever I top stitch, I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch all around the perimeter. You could even do a second row of stitching if you wanted for a decorative touch. You could also add a cork tag or a woven label to make this a little bit of a fancier pouch. I'm keeping mine very simple, just like I will do in the class at the library for this pattern. So I'll start a top stitch here, back stitch once, and go all the way around. So now I have that opening closed. I will just continue to top stitch the rest of the way. It'll be even more important for me to be careful with those pivot areas, since this stitching will be seen and will be noticed quite a bit from the outside. If you're someone who's still a little uncomfortable with top stitching, you would want to consider not using a contrasting thread like I am, using something that blends in so it's not as noticeable. You can see this seam is trying to roll here at the top, so I'm just picking it out, smoothing it, holding it flat while I'm going around the curve. We're coming up to that first sharp pivot point. I'm going to make for sure that everything looks good. And whenever you come to this pivot point, you want to kind of imagine when you turn, if your needle will be in the right position. If I turned right here, it wouldn't be. I would not be able to stitch properly. It would go off of the pouch. So I'm actually going to where it looks like when I turn it, it'll be in the perfect position. And it is. You can see it's still lined up to be that 1/8 of an inch. All you need to do to make this the card pouch to hold the cards is you're going to fold one edge over, and what I want to do is I want to have it to where this top part is not folding, it's flat, and we're just folding over the bottom part. I also want to make for sure that bottom part is lining up with the bottom of the pouch. Once I have it the way I want, I'm going to grab a clip and put it into place here. I'm going to use these thicker clips because I want to work on compressing the seam a little bit, so whenever I sew over it, it looks nice. That is how the first side looks. Let's go ahead and take the other side and do the exact same thing. We want this top part to still stay flat, but the bottom to line up with each other. Add the clips, and then we'll just kind of check to make for sure everything looks nice. So now what I'll do is I will sew it down this side, sew across the bottom, and back up the other side. There is this spot at the bottom where you are sewing over your seam again. I'm not too worried about sewing over the same area twice. Your stitching on this side might not match up perfectly. If it's really bothering you, then consider doing this row of stitching maybe at a different seam allowance than your previous steps of stitching. If you are someone that really struggles with how that would look, perhaps do your top stitching at 1/4 of an inch and do this little bit of stitching at 1/8 of an inch, or vice versa. Top stitching at 1/8 and do this row of stitching at 1/4. For me, I'm just going to go ahead and do another 1/8 of an inch to secure. So I'll start here at the top. I'm going to do a back stitch here. This side I don't have to worry about the stitches. There's no stitching here, so it's easy to just go down. When I get to the bottom here, I'm going to try to make sure my needle lands where those stitches are previously that I sewed. If I need to adjust any, I can. I'm going to adjust just a little bit. And now I can continue sewing. We're going to have a bump here, so if your machine struggles, you might need a hump jumper. This is definitely why you would not want any interfacing in your seam. Depending on the sewing machine you have, it could be tricky for your machine. You might get some skip stitches here. Back to that other corner, pivot and come back up the other side. Back stitch, let's trim the threads again. The last thing we'll need to do is we'll add a snap on the top and right here in the bottom section so that it can close up. I'm going to choose to use cam snaps just because they're quick, simple, easy, and cheap. With my cam snaps, I'm going to use this awl to make the placement for the top one. So the way I'm going to figure out where I want it to go is I'm just going to fold this in half, match up that seam, and then just kind of figure how low I want it. That looks like a great place there in the center. I use the awl to push through. I kind of twist it so that it goes in between the fibers on the material. So now that I have that whole place, what I will do is I will take the smooth side and it goes on the outside, push it through. I like to use the male portion for the one that moves. I feel like it's a little bit better since this is the non-stationary side and it'll just make it a little bit more secure. I use my handheld press to apply a decent amount of pressure there, and that kind of flares that edge out, and you can see now it is secure. Cam snaps aren't perfect for being the most secure thing. I definitely have had them pop off. I would like to get a press that's not handheld, but that's money, and currently I'm just focused on being frugal in my sewing room. I found the placement for where the bottom will go by simply pushing down to make an imprint on this material on the bottom. Use the awl to make that hole. This time I'm going to have the smooth side on the inside. Take the time to get the point to come out on the outside. Use the female portion of the cam snap. Slide it in place. Once again, get the handheld press and push it down. So this is how it looks. Just as a side note, you can see that one side of this is open. If that bothers you, you could definitely use a rivet here. If you wanted, you could just put a rivet or even do a little bit of stitching like this. I'll show you how just in case you wanted to. I'm just going to tack it down. I'm going to add just a stitch or two right along that curve. Not like really necessarily stitch it down, but just that little bit of a stitch will have it closed up if you like that. That's your choice. For me, I probably wouldn't do it, but I can see the benefits. So a rivet, a stitch or two here, and that will secure that top part if that's bothering you at all. Like I said, I think this would be good for girls, for feminine products. I think it would be good to keep things organized. This is the large, so you can see it's a lot larger for cards. A card would not fit snugly in this one. The small would probably fit the cards a little bit better. I just like the size of the large. I feel like this will be a great pouch for keeping things a little bit more organized, a little bit more storage. It would be great if you're giving a gift card to someone. You can give them in this and they can reuse the pouch. The main thing that I like about this pouch is that I think it is great to be used to teach others sewing skills. If you are someone who sews, consider offering those skills that you have learned to help others to get into sewing. I feel like sewing is so beneficial. Not only can it help you save money, but it can help with your mental health and just be a wonderful, fun hobby to have. This pattern is free. I'm going to put the link for where you can get this pattern. It will have the templates for the small and the large, and it'll also have the instructions so you can find it there. But also check out that website. They have so many free patterns on that website. I know this was a very quick and easy pattern today, but I hope even if you didn't learn anything that you maybe are just motivated to have a pattern that you can use to teach others to sew. If you have someone in your family that's been asking to sew, or even at your church, your library, wherever you spend free time, it would be something great to offer someone, and you never know, it could inspire them to become a sewist as well. Thank you so much for watching another Frugal Friday video of mine, and I hope you have a wonderful day.